everyone. Welcome to What's the Point Podcast. I am Nate Smith, your host. Today we've got, again, Susan Owen, CEO of Point, to dive into one of the most overlooked growth strategies in modern business, the power of the power trio, the CEO, the CMO, and the CFO. So, Susan, what is alignment between those three power people, the CMO, the CEO, the CMO, and the CFO? What does that actually look like in today's business climate?
I think you have to start with having the right people in the right slots, obviously, and then making sure that the three are in sync with the vision of the company, what the business goals are, and the CMO ultimately has to execute a strategy to get to the vision and the business goals of the company. The CFO has to be lockstep with them from a spend and a budgeting and making sure that the three are aligned. So I think that is kind of your foundation for how everything else flows within the company.
Okay. So the CEO casts the ultimate vision, the CMO in line with the CEO from a strategic marketing perspective, and the
Yes.
CFO from a, hey, let's make sure we're good stewards of your budget, making sure the spend is going towards the right things and that it's meeting their business objectives financially.
Yes, and accountability on the spend versus what's the value and what did they actually accomplish with that spend.
Nice. So you describe this trio as a growth machine when they're locked in, good or bad. What's an example you've seen where this chemistry has created breakthrough results?
I think it could be in any business, frankly, whether it's B2B or B2C. If it's a retail client, you obviously have to have top line growth in both. Mm-hmm. I think if there is a dynamic connection between the CEO and the CMO, they can be a very powerful team. Mm-hmm. And obviously the CFO has to be in line with what they're driving towards. But if the two of them are aligned and in sync and have really good communication, I think they can be very powerful. And examples of that could be with many companies. It could be Apple. I always refer to Apple because I think they do a really great job from a marketing perspective. But obviously, it's Tim Cook setting the goal for the company and the vision of where they would like to go. And then ultimately, where the rubber meets the road is we can talk strategy, but if you can't execute, you miss it. Mm-hmm. Execution, devil's in the details. Mm-hmm. So making it actually happen is probably one of the hardest parts.
Yeah, that's definitely the heaviest lift. I mean, casting vision is no joke either. I mean, you have to have a clear-cut idea about where the market is and where you'd like to find the gaps in it that you can fill, but getting there is the harder of the two. Though vision casting is tough too.
I mean, going from the brainstorming and the strategy and the big idea to actually breaking it down into tangible steps takes a lot of forethought, but discipline to actually execute well.
Well, I think that's one thing that Tim Cook and Steve Jobs before him did really well was they surrounded themselves with great people that could make those things happen. And they made it a point to understand the vision. Yeah. So what are some signs that, or actually, you know what, let's talk about this one. So why do you think marketing is still under leveraged in boardroom conversations around growth?
I think it's changing. I think it's evolving. I think with the media fragmentation, nobody has it all figured out. Now you add AI into that. And I think marketing has got to be a part of every discussion from a strategic, how are we going to grow this business? Marketing and sales have to be hand in glove as well. But I think the fragmentation in the media, traditional, non-traditional, digital, is creating a lot of new conversations around what is effective, what is actual measurement, performance marketing versus marketing. What is performance marketing? If it's just clicks and impressions, but it's not driving top line growth, what are you actually accomplishing for the business? So what is performance? I think that's really an interesting dynamic that is kind of out there right now. And I think the CEO and CMO have to be completely in sync to execute whatever goals that they're trying to accomplish. So I just think there's a lot at play right now, and I think it's bringing everybody to ask a lot of why questions, and then how do you incorporate AI into the whole strategy.
Susan, what are some signs that a leadership team isn't in alignment, and what's the cost of them not being so?
I think it becomes evident if the CEO and CMO, for example, are not aligned, and we've seen this. We've seen them work really well with some of our clients, and we've seen it kind of break down when they're not aligned. And you're pushing and pulling in opposite directions because one is trying to convince the other one why their way is the way, versus let's understand each other's point of view and then lock arms and then go hard. And the cost of that is time. So if you spend 6 to 12 months pushing and pulling, or you go ahead and execute something, people are not fully locked in and supportive, you really lose time, and time is money. And so I think it further delays you getting on with your business or hitting those business goals if you're not aligned. Or you do something but not do it well, and then you have to back up and do it again. And so I think it's a very expensive mistake. And I think if a CEO and a CMO are not aligned, I think that needs to get adjusted and resolved fairly quickly, so you don't lose that valuable time.
It's good. That's actually a really good segue into the next question, which is, from your perspective, from the perspective of a CEO, what do CMOs need to do better in order to be able to speak the language of both the CEO and the CFO, and vice versa? Because again, when you're starting to talk about alignment, the CMO kind of falls in the middle of the two. They're like, I need to understand the vision, but I also have to adhere to whatever our financial goals and obligations are, and to make sure that we are being the best steward that we can be with the company's budget, right, with the brand's budget. What can they do better to balance those things and to better communicate with the other two roles?
I think it gets into planning. Obviously, we're going to planning season, which is really important. And we get so busy with the day-to-day that sometimes people don't step back and say, okay, let's not wait until November, December to start planning. Let's look at it in third quarter. So then by fourth quarter, we've got your business goals, your strategy and tactics completely shelled out. So hitting January 1, first quarter, you're coming out of the chute really strong. And so I think it's really a discipline and a matter of sharing and getting on the same page early, soon enough, as to what does the next 12 months look like. And I do think getting out the first quarter strong will make your whole year. If you are not planned out and you don't have your strategies in place prior to January, it can really affect the rest of your year. So I think it gets down to very simple things, which is we got to do the planning and wrestle through those hard discussions early enough, and then getting alignment, and then obviously what's the budget to support it.
Yeah. That's really great. You actually answered two questions there, which was very awesome. So, because the next one was about planning season not being just a strategy, it's more of a power move. But in order to be able to make it a power move, you have to have all those things in place. So,
without a plan, without a strategy, you're just bumping around.
Yeah, throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Yeah. And every company has financial goals to meet, and sometimes you get curveballs that you don't expect. Sometimes, you have, and it has nothing to do with are you doing a good job or not. Sometimes it's just curveballs that come into play. It could be interest rates. It could be financial markets. It could be tariffs. It could be, vendor supply chain issues. It can be a lot of different things. But just having your hand on the pulse of your business where you can anticipate, but then sometimes it's a trifecta of storms. So I think having leaders that are resilient, that can push through those hard times to get you over the hump into the next place, I think is probably one of the most important aspects that you got to have within a company, because people are always there when the times are good. It's who's there when times are challenging.
Yeah, that's really good.
And a lot of companies, it's been a challenging couple of years, but then some of us are thriving.
Yeah.
So it just kind of depends on which side, but everybody will have their day. So planning helps.
Yeah, and staying solutions oriented, taking the challenges head on as they come your way, because it's not always going to be rainbows and roses all the time, Businesses are going to have challenges. And that's why companies like ours exist, is to solve for those, to help them solve for them. So that's actually a really good segue into the next one, Susan. I feel like this kind of answers itself, but what role does trust play in getting the three roles to align, and how is that built up or broken? And obviously trust is something that takes time, and that being broken can happen almost in an instant in some cases, but how important is trust as a factor in that process?
I think it's probably one of the most important things. I think if you are aligned and you do trust, you can have your disagreements, which you should have healthy discussion around anything, whether it's a concept, talents, adding services. Any kind of thing is worth its while to kind of challenge thought, just so you get better and you push to the next level. But when you have trust, you know that person's got your back, A. B, you trust that person's going to make wise decisions in your absence. You trust that the people understand the vision and then can go and execute. So I think trust is really an important thing. Without trust, I think things start to break down, and then that's when people go in different directions, is pushing and pulling again versus really accelerating because you're on the same page.
You brought up a really good point. We talk about this a lot in our own leadership meetings often, whereas it's kind of like being in a relationship or being in marriage, right? For those married folks out there, or those in long-term relationships, in order to be able to kind of cut through some of the really hard stuff, you have to have honest conversations, but you can have healthy disagreement. It's okay. You should kind of butt heads a little bit to get down to the core of what the issues are, so that you can really start to answer for them. I think that's but that level, and Brene Brown talks about this a lot, that level of vulnerability plays into every part of life. Even in business, you have to be able to be honest with one another. You know that old saying, like when you partner with somebody in business, it's like you're getting into bed with them, or that old, not to be lewd or anything like that, but that's a saying, right? And you start to think about it and you're like, man, it really is being in a true blue relationship with someone. And that takes an immense amount of trust to be able to do, not only internally, but with the people that you're doing the work for.
Well, and understanding the whole person, I think, is so important. You have a business relationship with them, but understanding their business side, their personal side, and then their family side. Yeah. Understanding what makes that person, what's the core of that person. I think you have to look at all things, and I think being an effective leader requires a lot of balance between all those different parts. And an effective team helps those that fall down on given days, because you could have a crisis, you could have an issue. So I think the more you trust, the more you're in line together, and the more you understand the whole being. I think that's where your effectiveness really comes in as a leadership team.
Yeah, that's really great. So with that said, how do you recommend companies bring marketing into early stages of the business plan? We talked a little bit about planning, trying to make sure you're planning early on and giving yourself enough lead time, rather than treating it as an execution arm. So like last minute, oh my gosh, we need to get our plan together for the next year, but it's October. How do we get past that? And how do we mine for those to help? Sometimes you have to kind of nudge clients a little bit. You have to kind of let them know, hey guys, it's starting to get into that mode where we need to get into.
Yeah, I think people just get busy in their day-to-day life. We all do it. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I'm up against a deadline. Yeah. And so our jobs are to be 5 steps ahead, so that we are planning and saying we need to carve out valuable time to plan and to think and to challenge thought so that next year's even better with what are those things that are going to work and what are not going to work. How does AI play into that? And then what didn't work so good? We're really good about digesting and dissecting when things don't go as well as we hope. Not from a critical perspective, but more from what did we learn and then what would we do different. And so I think staying ahead again on planning in the ideal world is really important so that you get your year off. So as an agency and as a strategy, we're really big on strategy. A plan is just a plan. A tactic doesn't get you anywhere without the strategy and understanding. And then, like, how are we going to measure it? And measurement is changing. It's evolving. At the end of the day, you got to drive revenue for whatever business it is. So I think sometimes that is the easiest measurement, but it has to take baby steps sometimes to get there.
Yeah. You brought up a really good point. I think that part in particular takes a lot of also sharing of resources internally. So like I know you're a big reader. You listen to audiobooks a lot, right? And when you're in your car and yeah. But you're also really generous about how you share your resources with the team, like with the leadership group, but then also the larger team. And I think that's so important because especially as it pertains to not just the interaction that you have with the CMO and the CFO, but also how you're bringing up the next gen, like you're the people who are going to succeed you, right? Like who are going to be after you and help them come up through their career. I think that's a big part of it too. But so we all know businesses love, and that's a really good segue. The next one is businesses love confident, cohesive leadership teams. What can companies do more of to outwardly project that, not only during planning season, but just all the time?
I think you can feel confidence, and I think you can feel when somebody's not confident.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like your first impression, when you were growing up and your mom and dad said, well, your first impression is there's only one.
Yeah.
And
It's true.
I think from the way you shake somebody's hand to the genuine interest you have in conversations, I think teaching all of those little things are really important. And I think as a group and as a team, you always want to be teaching. And I learn from sometimes the youngest people in our company. Teaching is done at a lot of different levels. And I think if you're open-minded and you're curious and you're inquisitive on what else can I learn today, what are the new things coming, and always challenging yourself to look at things in different perspectives, I think is really important. Mm-hmm. And then teaching others what you have a gift in. And it's and it can be different for everybody. So why not share that gift? And I think naturally most of us are teachers by nature, whether it's to your children or your family or your business associates or a client. You like to have people learn from things that you've learned. Yeah. So to me, you can't pay it forward unless you're willing to invest.
So do you think that's a really good way? That's a good way for leaders to be able to, we oftentimes talk about being a trusted resource for people, not only for the team internally, for the people that we're around every day, but to other people out there who may be looking for somebody to partner with and with their marketing initiatives, or just you putting yourself out there, you, the CMO, the CFO, putting themselves out there as a resource who has a knowledge base that they've been able to amass over a career to say, here are the things I know to be true, and here's my experience with it. Let's talk about it, right? Do you think that outwardly putting those kinds of things out into the world can really help from a visibility perspective?
I think people's experiences are all very different. And I think helping people through various things, whether it's business or personal, I think having those experiences is what makes you you. And from a leadership perspective, I think it helps you build empathy. Mm-hmm. And I think it helps you drive and know how far you can push to get a result. So I think understanding and teaching constantly is something that is really important for all teams at all levels.
That's great. So for all the leaders that are listening today and watching this podcast, what do you think are some things that they can do to help create that level of cohesion and chemistry amongst their own C-suite?
I think it's genuineness. I think when there is somebody that they genuinely know, you care about me or you care about my business, it's something that's felt. The enthusiasm that you bring to a meeting, to a thought, to a planning session becomes very visible with a client, for example. And I think people can feel that. People can see that. People can see if you're confident and you care. And when you care, then people trust. And so I think it's just being authentic and genuine as that authentic leader that people can see the difference in, and your excitement for their business and for understanding their goals and for digging deeper to ask a lot of questions. People love to talk about their businesses, and that's how you really get into the inside of how can you be an asset to them. You have to understand it in a detailed way.
Well, Susan, thank you. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing those insights with us today. It was really wonderful to get some ideas about how you, not only the way you would hope that other companies would work, but the way that you work internally with our leadership team here, which was really awesome. So thanks for coming on and chatting with us.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. It was really a fun conversation.
Yeah. It always is. So for those of you out there in listening and watching land, you can check us out at The Point Group across social channels. And don't forget to subscribe and follow here on YouTube if you're watching the long form version. And thanks for checking us out, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.